The envelope hit the kitchen table with a sound like a death sentence. Elara knew what it meant before her father even looked up. She'd watched him lose everything over the past 3 years, the savings, her mother's jewelry, the land that had been in their family for generations. She'd watched the gambling debts pile up like bodies after a war. She just never thought he'd sell her. "It's done," Richard Vance said, not meeting her eyes. "They're coming for you in an hour." Elara stood frozen in the doorway, a basket of laundry still warm against her hip. "What's done? Who's coming?" Her stepmother, Clarissa, glided into the kitchen with a smile that belonged on a snake. "Your father has finally found a use for you, dear. You should be grateful. Not many packs want a Wolfless Omega." The laundry basket slipped from Elara's fingers. Wolfless. The word that had defined her entire life. 23 years old, and she'd never shifted. Never felt her wolf stir inside her. The pack healers had poked and prodded and declared her defective at 16. After that, she became invisible, just another mouth to feed, another disappointment in a house full of them. "You sold me." Elara's voice came out strange, disconnected. "Like furniture. Like livestock. Don't be dramatic." Richard finally looked at her, and she saw nothing in his eyes. No guilt. No love. Maybe there never had been. "It's a servant position. Good, honest work. Better than rotting here." "Where?" He didn't answer. Mira appeared on the stairs, her pretty face twisted with satisfaction. At 19, she was everything Elara wasn't: shifted, beautiful, cruel. "Does it matter? At least now you'll be useful for something." The transport van smelled like rust and fear. Elara sat on a metal bench, her single bag of belongings clutched against her chest. No one had told her where she was going. No one had said goodbye. Her father had taken the money, she'd seen the stack of bills, thick enough to choke on, and walked away without a backward glance. 2 guards sat up front, separated from her by a metal grate. They'd been talking for hours, their voices carrying through the barrier whether they meant them to or not. 3 new ones this month. The king's collecting servants like they're going out of style. Better than the alternative. "You hear what happened to that alpha from Silvercrest?" Challenged the king's border policy. A low whistle. "They found pieces of him in 4 different territories." Elara's blood ran cold. "That's Blackmoor for you. The beast of the north doesn't play games." Blackmoor. Every wolf knew that name. The most powerful pack in the northern territories. The Lycan king who'd held his throne for 2 centuries. Rumors said he'd killed his own brother to take it. Rumors said he'd never taken a Luna because no woman could survive his bed. Rumors said servants who displeased him simply disappeared. And she was being delivered to his doorstep like a package. "Think any of these new ones will last?" the first guard asked. "The Omegas might. The rogues." A shrug in his voice. "Month, maybe 2. You know how the king is about imperfection." Elara pressed her forehead against the cold metal wall and tried to remember how to breathe. Blackmoor Castle rose from the mountainside like a threat made stone. Gothic spires clawed at a steel-gray sky. Black flags snapped in a wind that cut straight to the bone. The walls were ancient, scarred by battles Elara couldn't imagine, and every window seemed to watch her approach with cold, hungry eyes. The van stopped in a courtyard where other vehicles were unloading their human cargo. Elara counted 11 other women, all of them young, all of them wearing the same shell-shocked expression she felt on her own face. Omegas and rogues, purchased from failing packs like livestock at auction. "This is my life now," she thought. "This is what I'm worth." Guards herded them inside, through corridors lit by torches that threw dancing shadows on stone walls. The castle smelled like smoke and pine and something older, something wild. Elara's skin prickled with awareness she didn't understand. They were taken to a large hall where a woman waited. She was perhaps 50, with iron-gray hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that could freeze water. Her uniform was immaculate, her posture rigid, and when she looked at the new arrivals, her lip curled with undisguised contempt. "I am Helene," she said. "Head of the servant staff. You belong to Blackmoor now. Whatever you were before, names, ranks, families, forget them. Here, you are useful or you are nothing." She walked down the line, inspecting each woman like merchandise. Some she nodded at. Others received a sneer, a shake of her head, a muttered assignment to some undesirable post. When she reached Elara, she stopped. Her nostrils flared. Her eyes narrowed. "Wolfless," she said, and the word dripped with disgust. "They sent us a defective." Heat flooded Elara's cheeks. "I can work. I'm stronger than I look. You'll work in the lower kitchens." Helene cut her off like she was swatting a fly. "Stay invisible. The king has no tolerance for imperfection." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "Keep your head down, girl. Don't speak unless spoken to. Don't go where you're not told. And pray the king never learns you exist." Elara nodded, not trusting her voice. But as Helene moved on, something nagged at her. She scanned the other servants in the hall, the ones who'd been here longer, who wore their uniforms like second skins. All of them had wolves. She could sense it, even without one of her own. That subtle energy, that presence that marked shifters from ordinary humans. Not a single wolfless servant among them. She caught the arm of a passing girl. "Are there others? Like me?" The girl's face went pale. "Others? Wolfless. Where are they assigned?" The girl yanked her arm back like Elara had burned her. "There aren't any." She hurried away before Elara could ask anything else. Later, after she'd been given a uniform and a narrow bed in a dormitory that smelled like lye soap, Elara found Helene alone in a corridor. "The other wolfless servants," she said. "Where are they?" Helene's face did something strange. For just a moment, fear flickered behind those cold eyes. Real fear, raw and quickly smothered. There were others. Her voice was flat, controlled. "They didn't last." "What does that?" "Don't ask questions, girl." Helene gripped her arm hard enough to bruise. "Not about that. Not ever. Just do your work and stay invisible." She walked away without looking back. Elara was supposed to be in the lower kitchens. She'd made a wrong turn somewhere, distracted by the maze of corridors and her own spiraling thoughts. By the time she realized her mistake, she was in a part of the castle she'd never seen before. The halls here were different, wider, richer, lined with tapestries that depicted wolves in battle. The stones beneath her knees were cold as she scrubbed, trying to make herself useful until she could find her way back. She shouldn't be here. Some instinct told her that, screamed it through every nerve. But she couldn't seem to make herself leave. The footsteps came without warning. Heavy. Deliberate. Each one echoing like a drumbeat, growing louder, closer. Elara's hands stilled on her brush. Her heart slammed against her ribs. A door burst open at the end of the corridor. And the largest man she'd ever seen stepped through. He was a mountain given human form. Tall, God, impossibly tall, with shoulders that blocked the torchlight and hands that could crush skulls. A scar cut down his jaw, silvered with age. His hair was black as midnight, and his eyes. His eyes were darker. Bottomless. Ancient. Those eyes locked onto her. He stopped. His nostrils flared, chest expanding with a breath that seemed to steal all the air from the corridor. Something shifted in his expression, shock, maybe. Or hunger. Or something far more dangerous that Elara had no name for. "Who are you?" His voice was low, rough, shaking with an emotion she couldn't identify. Elara opened her mouth, but no sound came out. She was pinned by that gaze, frozen like prey before a predator. Another man appeared behind him, younger, with the bearing of a soldier. "Your Majesty, the council is waiting." "Leave." The word cracked like a whip. The king still hadn't looked away from her. Hadn't blinked. Sire? Everyone. The king's voice dropped to something barely human. Leave. Now. The corridor emptied in seconds. Guards, servants, the soldier who'd spoken, all of them vanished like smoke, their footsteps fading into terrified silence. And Elara was alone. With the Lycan King. He took a step toward her. Then another. Each movement deliberate, predatory, like he was fighting some war she couldn't see. Your name. It wasn't a question. Elara. The word came out as a whisper. Elara Vance. I'm new. I'm sorry, I got lost, I shouldn't be here. No. He was close now. Close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, could smell pine and smoke and something wild that made her head spin. You shouldn't. His hand rose. She flinched, expecting pain. Instead, his fingers brushed her jaw with a gentleness that made no sense. That terrified her more than violence would have. What are you? He murmured, more to himself than to her. What are you doing to me? Elara had no answer. She had nothing but the thunder of her own heartbeat and the inexplicable, impossible feeling that her entire life had just shifted on its axis. And in the depths of her chest, in a place that had been silent for 23 years. Something stirred. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 2. The king moved toward her like a storm rolling across open water. Each step was controlled, deliberate, the walk of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. His eyes never left her face, and something in them burned with an intensity that made Elara's bones feel like they were melting. Do you know what you are to me? The question came out rough, almost broken. Like the words had been torn from somewhere deep inside him. Elara shook her head, pressing her back harder against the cold stone wall. Her heart hammered so violently she was sure he could hear it. I'm no one. Just a servant. I got lost, I swear I wasn't trying to. That's not what I asked. He was close now. Too close. She could see the individual threads of silver in his black hair, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes that spoke of centuries rather than decades. The scar on his jaw was pale against his tanned skin, a ridge of violence made permanent. And his eyes, God, his eyes. They weren't just dark. They were ancient. Full of something she couldn't name, something that looked almost like pain. I don't understand, she whispered. A sound escaped him. Low, guttural, wounded. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, and she watched the muscles in his jaw work as he fought for control. You should feel it. His voice cracked on the words. The bond. The pull. You should know. Know what? He stared at her like she'd driven a knife into his chest. And for a moment, just a moment, the terrifying Lycan King looked almost lost. You really can't feel it, he said. Not a question. A realization. You have no idea. Elara's confusion must have shown on her face because something in his expression shifted. Hardened. The vulnerability vanished behind a mask of cold authority. Do you have a mate? The question came through gritted teeth, each word sharp enough to cut. No. She blinked, thrown by the sudden change in topic. I'm wolfless. No one would ever answer the question. I said no. Her voice came out stronger now, defensive. She didn't understand this interrogation, didn't understand any of this. I don't have a mate. I've never had anyone. Something in his chest seemed to loosen. His shoulders dropped a fraction of an inch. The gold that had been bleeding into his dark eyes retreated slightly. Elara looked away, heat flooding her cheeks. Not yet, at least. If someone would even want someone like me. She heard him move. She didn't see it, he was too fast, too sudden. One moment he was 3 feet away. The next, his fist was buried in the stone wall beside her head. The crack echoed like thunder. A vase on a nearby pedestal shattered from the vibration alone, raining porcelain across the floor. Dust and fragments of stone rained down on Elara's shoulder. She screamed. His face was inches from hers. His eyes blazed pure gold now, no black remaining, his wolf surging forward, barely contained beneath the surface of his skin. When he spoke, his voice was layered with a growl that didn't sound human. No one will ever claim you. Do you understand me? Each word was a snarl, a promise, a threat. You are mine. Mine. And I will kill anyone who dares to touch you. Anyone who looks at you too long. Anyone who even thinks. I don't even know your name. The words burst out of her, high and desperate and edged with hysteria. I don't know who you are or what you want or why you're. Kael. He cut her off, his breath hot against her face. My name is Kael. And you will learn everything else soon enough. Her fear was a living thing now, crawling up her throat, making it hard to breathe. But beneath it, beneath the terror and the confusion and the desperate urge to run, something else stirred. A flutter. Faint as a butterfly's wing. A whisper of warmth in the center of her chest. She ignored it. She had to be imagining it. Wolfless girls didn't feel bonds. Wolfless girls didn't feel anything. Kael forced himself to step back. Every instinct screamed against it. His wolf was howling, clawing, demanding that he claim what was his. 200 years he'd waited. 200 years of emptiness, of watching other wolves find their mates while he remained alone. He'd started to believe the moon goddess had forgotten him. And now she was here. Standing in his corridor in a servant's uniform, smelling like cheap soap and fear and something underneath, something sweet and wild that made his head spin. His mate. But she couldn't feel it. He inhaled deeply, searching for her wolf, for that subtle energy that marked all shifters. He found nothing. Just emptiness. A void where her wolf should be. You're wolfless, he said. It wasn't a question, but she nodded anyway. I never shifted. The healers said I was defective. The word made him want to kill something. Preferably whoever had first applied it to her. How is this possible? He wasn't asking her. He was asking the universe, the moon goddess, whatever cosmic force had decided to torture him with a mate who couldn't even recognize what he was to her. I'm sorry. Her voice was small. I don't know what you want from me. I don't know what any of this means. Kael closed his eyes. Breathed. When he opened them again, he'd wrestled his wolf back under control. Barely. You won't return to the servant quarters. What? You'll be moved to the royal wing. He was already turning, already planning, his mind racing through possibilities. Until I understand what you are. I told you what I am. She stepped forward, and something like anger flickered across her fear. Good. He preferred her angry. Anger meant fire, and fire meant she wasn't broken. I'm nobody. I'm wolfless. I'm the daughter of a man who sold me to pay his gambling debts. There's nothing to understand. Kael looked at her, really looked at her. The defiant tilt of her chin despite the terror in her eyes. The way she held herself, shoulders back, refusing to cower even when everything in her probably screamed to run. She had no idea what she was. No idea what that ember in his chest meant. No idea that she'd just become the most important person in 5 territories. We'll see, was all he said. Ronan. The beta appeared instantly, materializing from whatever shadow he'd been waiting in. His expression was carefully blank, but Kael caught the flicker of shock when he looked at Elara. He could smell it too, then. Or rather, smell the absence of it. This woman is to be moved to the east wing immediately, Kael ordered. The blue chambers. Post guards at her door, for her protection, not her imprisonment. Send for the healer. She's to be examined for any injuries from her journey. Your Majesty. And she eats before I do. Kael was already walking away, needing distance before his control shattered completely. Whatever she wants. As much as she wants. Is that understood? Yes, Your Majesty. Kael paused at the end of the corridor. He didn't turn around, didn't trust himself to look at her again. This isn't a punishment, he said quietly. Whatever you're thinking, it's not that. He left before she could respond. The blue chambers were bigger than her family's entire house. Elara stood in the center of the room, turning in a slow circle, trying to make sense of the past 3 hours. The bed could fit 6 people comfortably. The windows looked out over a mountain vista that seemed to stretch forever. There was a fireplace large enough to roast a whole pig, already crackling with warmth. And she was alone. Guarded, watched, probably monitored in ways she couldn't see, but alone. You are mine. The king's words echoed in her head. The rage in his voice. The possessiveness. The way he'd looked at her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning. None of it made sense. A knock at the door made her jump. Before she could respond, Helene swept in, and her expression could have curdled milk. Well. The head servant's voice dripped with venom barely concealed beneath a thin veneer of politeness. The defective girl gets royal chambers. I wonder what you did to deserve such attention. I didn't do anything. Elara fought to keep her voice steady. I got lost. He found me. That's all. Is it? Helene's smile was a knife wrapped in silk. The king has never taken a personal interest in a servant before. Not once in 200 years. And suddenly a wolfless nobody catches his eye? She stepped closer. What are you playing at, girl? I'm not playing at anything. I don't understand any of this. Then let me make something clear. Helene's mask dropped entirely. Pure hatred gleamed in her eyes. You may have the king's attention now, but attention fades. And when it does, when he realizes you're nothing but a broken, useless waste of space, you'll be back where you belong. With the rest of the garbage. She swept out without another word. Elara sank onto the edge of the impossibly soft bed and tried to remember how to breathe. The healer came and went. An older woman with gentle hands who checked Elara for injuries with clinical efficiency and made no comments about her wolfless status. The examination was quick, professional, almost kind. Then came food. More food than Elara had seen in months: roasted meat, fresh bread, vegetables glistening with butter, pastries still warm from the oven. She ate until her stomach ached and still barely made a dent. Through it all, she kept waiting for the catch. The price. The moment when someone would explain that this was all a mistake, or worse, some elaborate cruelty. It never came. Night fell. The guards changed outside her door. Elara lay in the massive bed, staring at the canopy above her, unable to sleep despite her exhaustion. He could have hurt me, she thought. He destroyed a wall. He was shaking with rage. But he didn't touch me. Not like that. Why? The soft knock came just past midnight. Elara sat up, heart pounding. Who's there? The door cracked open. A face appeared, old, weathered, framed by white hair that looked like it hadn't been brushed in days. The woman slipped inside before Elara could react, pressing a finger to her lips. Don't scream, she whispered. Please. I need to tell you something. Who are you? Brina. I've worked in these kitchens for 40 years. The old woman glanced nervously at the door. And I've seen things. Things no one talks about. What things? Brina moved closer, her eyes darting around the room like she expected shadows to come alive. You're not the first wolfless girl brought to this castle. Did you know that? The words hit Elara like ice water. What? 3 before you. Over the past century. Brina's voice dropped even lower. Each one was like you, no wolf, no shift, nothing special to anyone's eye. Each one caught the attention of someone powerful. And each one Each one what? Vanished. The word hung in the air between them. What do you mean, vanished? Gone. One day they were here, the next. Brina's hands trembled. No body. No trace. No explanation. Just empty rooms and servants who knew better than to ask questions. Elara's mouth went dry. What happened to them? Really? They started hearing things. Brina's eyes filled with something ancient and terrified. Voices. Whispers from inside their own heads. They thought they were going mad. They'd talk about a woman speaking to them, calling to them, trying to tell them something. And then, one morning, she made a gesture like smoke dissolving. You think someone killed them? I don't know what I think. Brina grabbed Elara's hands, her grip surprisingly strong. I just know you need to be careful. Whatever the king wants with you, whatever you are, there are people in this castle who don't want you to find out. She was gone before Elara could ask anything else, slipping through the door like a ghost. Sleep was impossible now. Elara lay rigid beneath the silk covers, Brina's words playing on repeat in her mind. 3 wolfless girls. Voices in their heads. Gone without a trace. What am I? The question spiraled through her thoughts, unanswerable. She was nothing. Nobody. A defective omega sold by her own father. There was nothing special about her, nothing worth vanishing over. And yet. You are mine. The king's voice. The absolute certainty in it. The way he'd looked at her like she was the answer to a prayer he'd been screaming for centuries. What does he know that I don't? The whisper came without warning. Faint. Female. Not a sound in the room, a sound inside her head. He found us. Elara went rigid. Finally. After so long. He found us. Who? The word came out strangled. Who's there? But they're coming too. They always come. You need to wake me before they do. Before he understands. Before. The voice cut off. Not faded. Not finished. Cut off, like someone had severed it with a blade. The silence left behind was worse than any scream. Elara bolted upright, gasping. Her hand flew to her chest, pressing against the spot where she'd felt that flutter earlier. Where she felt something now, something struggling, something trapped, something trying desperately to reach her. Her nose was bleeding. She touched her upper lip, stared at the crimson on her fingertips. The copper taste flooded her mouth. And in the silence of the royal chambers, surrounded by luxury she didn't earn and danger she didn't understand, Elara finally admitted the truth she'd been avoiding her whole life. Something was inside her. Something that had been sleeping for 23 years. And it was starting to wake up. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 3. Kael told himself it was strategy. A king needed to understand potential threats. A king needed to monitor anomalies in his household. A king needed to know everything that happened under his roof, including the movements of one small, wolfless servant girl who'd somehow become the axis around which his entire world now turned. He told himself a lot of things in those first few days. None of them were true. The truth was simpler, and far more damning. Being near her was the only peace his wolf had known in 200 years. The constant restlessness that had plagued him since adolescence, the prowling, the hunting, the endless search for something he couldn't name, all of it quieted when she was close. His wolf stopped pacing. His mind stopped racing. For a few precious moments, he could simply breathe. So he watched her. From doorways. From balconies. From the shadows of corridors she walked through without knowing he was there. He watched her explore the castle with cautious curiosity, watched her help other servants even though they whispered about her behind her back, watched her stand at her window each night and stare at the mountains like she was searching for answers in the stone. He found excuses to summon her. Reports that needed delivering to her wing. Questions about her comfort that could have been asked by anyone. Meals that required her presence for reasons he couldn't articulate even to himself. His court noticed. The king has lost his mind, he heard a baron mutter to another after Kael ordered Elara's chambers redecorated for the third time in a week. Over a servant. A wolfless one at that. Perhaps it's a phase, the other replied. He's collected broken things before. Kael's claws had extended before he'd made the conscious decision. Both men had needed healers by the time he was done. But the whispers continued. The beast of the north, brought low by a girl who couldn't even shift. It would have been laughable if it weren't so painfully accurate. You'll serve at the council meeting today. Elara looked up from the breakfast she'd been picking at. Kael stood in her doorway like he belonged there, which, technically, he did. The entire castle belonged to him. Including, apparently, her. I'm not trained for formal service, she said carefully. Helene said. I don't care what Helene said. He stepped inside, and the room immediately felt smaller. You'll stand along the wall with the other servers. You'll pour wine when glasses are empty. You'll speak to no one. Why? The question came out before she could stop it. She'd been doing that lately, forgetting to be afraid, forgetting that this man could snap her neck with 2 fingers. Something about him made her bold in ways that terrified her. Kael's jaw tightened. Because I want you there. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. He left before she could argue further. The council chamber was a cathedral of power. Vaulted ceilings soared overhead, supported by columns carved with wolves in various stages of hunt and battle. A massive table dominated the center, surrounded by chairs that each bore the crest of a different pack or noble house. And at the head, on a throne that looked like it had been hewn from a single block of black stone, sat Kael. He looked different here. Harder. The man who'd touched her jaw with unexpected gentleness was gone, replaced by something ancient and cold and utterly without mercy. Elara pressed her back against the wall and tried to become invisible. The meeting droned on, territory disputes, trade agreements, military positioning. She understood perhaps 1 word in 10, but she understood the dynamics perfectly. Everyone in this room was afraid of the man on the throne. Even the ones who smiled, who laughed, who pretended to be at ease. Especially them. The northern border remains unacceptable. A thick-necked alpha from somewhere called Thornwood was on his feet, his face red with barely contained rage. Your wolves killed 3 of my scouts last month. 3. And you expect me to simply accept? Your scouts crossed into my territory. Kael's voice was flat, bored. Twice I sent warnings. Twice they were ignored. The 3rd time, I sent a message they couldn't misunderstand. Those men had families. Then perhaps their families should have taught them to follow orders. The alpha's hands slammed onto the table. You arrogant bastard. You sit there on your stolen throne, making decrees like you're the moon goddess herself, but you're nothing but a murderer who got lucky. Your brother was twice the king you'll ever. Kael moved. Elara didn't see him stand. Didn't see him cross the room. One moment he was on his throne, the next, he had the alpha's arm in his grip and was twisting. The first crack made her stomach lurch. The second made bile rise in her throat. The third dropped the alpha to his knees, screaming, his arm bent at angles that arms were never meant to bend. Kael released him like he was discarding trash. The alpha crumpled to the floor, sobbing, cradling his destroyed limb. Anyone else? Kael's voice hadn't changed. Still flat. Still bored. He looked around the table at the pale, frozen faces. Anyone else want to discuss my brother? Silence. Good. He returned to his throne, settling back like nothing had happened. Now. Where were we? The meeting continued. And Elara realized, with crystalline clarity, exactly what kind of man fate had thrown her to. She was shaking when the meeting finally ended. She'd managed to pour wine without spilling it, managed to keep her face blank through 3 more hours of political maneuvering that now felt like a thin veneer over constant, simmering violence. But the moment she was dismissed, she fled. Not fast enough. You. The voice was female, cultured, sharp as broken glass. Elara turned to find a woman blocking the corridor, tall, stunning, with auburn hair swept up in an elaborate style and a gown that probably cost more than Elara's father had ever earned in a year. Lady Seraphine, someone had whispered during the council meeting. She's been warming the king's bed for decades. Everyone assumed she'd be named Luna eventually. The lady's smile didn't reach her eyes. So you're the little pet everyone's whispering about. Elara dipped her head in the approximation of a bow. My lady. I should return to. You should answer my question. Seraphine stepped closer, and her perfume was cloying, suffocating. What makes you think you're special? Because he's fixated on you? A laugh like tinkling poison. He collected the last 3 Wolfless girls too, you know. Made them feel special. Kept them close. Elara's blood ran cold. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Seraphine's smile widened. 3 girls. Just like you. Each one thought she was different. Each one thought the king's attention meant something. She leaned in close, her breath hot against Elara's ear. Do you know where they are now? Where? Gone. The word was a whisper, a curse. Ask him, little pet. Ask the Beast King what happened to the broken toys he collected before you. And then ask yourself how long before you disappear too. She swept away in a rustle of silk, leaving Elara frozen in the corridor. Who were they? Kael looked up from the reports on his desk. He'd summoned her to his study, another excuse to have her near, but clearly hadn't expected this. Who were who? The Wolfless girls. Elara stood rigid, hands clenched at her sides to hide their trembling. Before me. Lady Seraphine said there were 3. She said you collected them. Something flickered across his face. Pain. Guilt. Something ancient and wounded that made him look, for just a moment, like a man instead of a monster. Seraphine talks too much. That's not an answer. You're making a habit of demanding answers, little wolf. But there was no anger in his voice. Just exhaustion. Yes. There were others. 3 women over the past century, all of them wolfless, all of them. He stopped, jaw working. I was drawn to them. My wolf was drawn to them. Not like with you, nothing like with you, but something about them called to me. What happened to them? They were taken from me. The words came out rough, torn. One by one. I'd find their rooms empty. No sign of struggle, no trace, no explanation. Just, gone. You never found out who. I tore this kingdom apart looking. His fist slammed onto the desk, scattering papers. I executed anyone I thought might be responsible. I interrogated, I tortured, I hunted. And I found nothing. Whoever took them was always 3 steps ahead. Elara stared at him. The rage in his eyes was real. The grief buried beneath it was real too. Why are you telling me this? Because you asked. He stood, moving around the desk toward her. And because I need you to understand something. Whatever happened to them, I won't let it happen again. Not to you. Never to you. Why me? The question she'd been afraid to ask. I'm nobody. I'm wolfless. You're mine. He stopped inches away, his presence overwhelming, his eyes burning into hers. That's all that matters. That's all that will ever matter. The training session started the next day. For your protection, Kael said as he led her to a private courtyard. You need to know how to defend yourself. What he taught her was brutal and efficient, how to strike soft targets, how to break a grip, how to use an attacker's weight against them. Elara was terrible at all of it. But Kael was patient in a way she hadn't expected, correcting her form with hands that lingered longer than necessary. Every time he touched her, her skin burned. Every time he stepped close, that flutter in her chest grew stronger. And the voice, that mysterious whisper she'd tried to convince herself she'd imagined, stirred whenever his fingers brushed her skin. "He's waking me," it murmured. "The bond is waking me. Soon." Soon what? She wanted to scream. "What are you? What am I?" But the voice never answered directly. Just whispered and stirred and retreated, leaving her more confused than before. The archives were locked, but not well. Elara had spent 3 days learning the castle's patterns, when the guards changed, which corridors were empty at which hours, where the servants didn't bother to patrol. The archives, buried deep in the east wing, fell into the last category. The lock gave way to a hairpin and 10 minutes of patient work. Inside, dust motes swirled in the moonlight streaming through high windows. Shelves stretched toward the ceiling, packed with ledgers and records and documents dating back centuries. She started with the servant registries. It took hours. Her eyes ached, her fingers were black with dust, but she found them eventually. 3 entries, spread across the past 100 years, each one marked with the same notation: status, transferred. Destination, unknown. No explanation. No further records. Just 3 women who had been documented and then erased. Each one had arrived during a month containing a lunar eclipse. Each one had disappeared on the night of that eclipse. Elara's hands trembled as she checked the calendar mounted on the archive wall. The next lunar eclipse was in 2 weeks. She was still processing this when she found the letter. It was tucked into a ledger from 23 years ago, sealed with wax that crumbled at her touch. The handwriting on the envelope made her breath stop. Serenity Vance. Her mother's name. Her mother who died giving birth to her. Her mother whose face she'd never seen, whose voice she'd never heard, whose very existence her father refused to acknowledge. Elara broke the seal with shaking fingers. To whoever finds this. If my daughter has come to Blackmoor, it means they've found her bloodline. She is not Wolfless. Her wolf is one of the originals, sealed by blood magic to protect her from those who would harvest its power. The words blurred. Elara blinked hard, forcing herself to focus. The seal weakens with the mate bond. If she has found her mate, the seal is already breaking. The flutter in her chest. The voice in her head. The way her skin burned when Kael touched her. She must complete the bond before the eclipse, or they will cut the wolf from her soul, and she will die as I did, screaming, while they take what was never theirs. No. Her father knows. He has always known. He sold her for a reason. No, no, no. Protect her. Please. Serenity Vance. The letter fell from Elara's nerveless fingers. Her father hadn't sold her to clear a gambling debt. He'd sold her to the people who murdered her mother. He'd sold her to her killers. And in 2 weeks, they were coming to finish what they'd started. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 4. Kael didn't rage. That was what terrified her most. Elara had braced herself for fury, for the explosive violence she'd witnessed in the council chamber, for shattered furniture and cracked walls and the beast barely leashed beneath his skin. She'd prepared arguments, explanations, defenses for why she'd broken into the archives without permission. Instead, he went still. Utterly, completely still, like a statue carved from ice. His eyes fixed on the letter in her trembling hands, and something in his face simply closed. Shuddered. Became unreadable in a way that made her stomach drop. Where did you find this? His voice was flat. Controlled. Terrifying. The archives. In the East Wing. I was looking for information about the other wolfless women, and I found. The archives should have been empty. He took the letter from her, handling it like it might detonate. Those records were moved years ago. Destroyed, most of them. Someone wanted you to find this. What? This letter. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were ancient, haunted. It was planted. Someone knew you would go looking. Someone wanted you to discover what you are. Elara's legs felt weak. She grabbed the edge of his desk to steady herself. Is it true? What my mother wrote, the seal, the original bloodline, the eclipse, is any of it true? I don't know. The admission seemed to cost him. But I intend to find out. And if it is? Her voice cracked. Am I going to die? Kael crossed the distance between them in 2 strides. His hands gripped her shoulders, pulling her against him with a desperation that stole her breath. She could feel his heart pounding beneath his chest, feel the fine tremor running through his massive frame. I will burn this world before I let anyone take you from me. His voice cracked, raw and broken in a way she'd never heard. Do you understand? I have waited 2 centuries for you. I have searched every corner of this kingdom. I have watched mate bonds form around me while I remained empty, alone, convinced that the goddess had abandoned me. His hand came up to cup her face, tilting it toward his. And now you're here. You're real. And I will slaughter armies, raise kingdoms, tear the moon from the sky itself before I let anyone hurt you. Elara should have been afraid of the violence in his words. Instead, she felt something warm bloom in her chest. That flutter again, stronger now. The whisper in her mind stirring. He means it, the voice said. Every word. He would destroy himself to save you. Who are you? Elara whispered. She wasn't sure if she was asking Kael or the presence in her head. Both answered. I am yours, Kael said. I am you, the voice replied. Ronan arrived within minutes of the summons. Kael's beta was built like a battering ram, shorter than his king but twice as wide, with a face that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and a loyalty that had never once wavered in 150 years. He took one look at the letter, then at Elara, then back at the letter. Well, he said. Shit. Eloquent as always. Kael's mouth twitched despite the gravity of the situation. Where's Thane? Coming. He was in the lower town, following a lead on. Ronan stopped as the study door opened again. Thane slipped in like smoke. Where Ronan was obvious, Thane was invisible. Average height, forgettable face, the kind of man your eyes slid past without registering. He'd served as Kael's spymaster for over a century, and in all that time, Elara had never heard anyone speak ill of him. You summoned, Your Majesty. His voice was soft, pleasant. Harmless. We have a problem. Kael handed him the letter. Someone planted this in the archives for Elara to find. I need to know who. I need to know how they knew she'd go looking. And I need to know everything, about the harvesters. Thane's expression didn't flicker. The harvesters are a myth. A story mothers tell children to frighten them into obedience. Then explain the 3 women who disappeared from this castle on eclipse nights. Kael's voice hardened. Explain the letter from a dead woman warning about blood magic and original bloodlines. Explain why someone wanted my mate to know she's marked for slaughter. Thane looked at Elara with new interest. Your mate? You're certain? More certain than I've been of anything in my life. Something flickered behind Thane's forgettable eyes. Gone before Elara could identify it. I'll begin investigating immediately. The archives, the letter's origin, any connections to the missing women. If there's a conspiracy, I'll find it. You have 2 weeks. Kael's hand found Elara's, gripping tight. The eclipse is in 2 weeks. Whatever they're planning, they'll move then. Thane bowed and disappeared as silently as he'd arrived. Ronan lingered. You want me to double her guard? Triple it. And I want the castle locked down. No one in or out without my personal authorization. That'll cause talk. Let them talk. Kael looked at Elara, and his expression softened infinitesimally. Let them say whatever they want. I don't care about rumors. I care about keeping her alive. The voice grew stronger over the following days. I am Nyx. It came to her at odd moments, while she bathed, while she dressed, while she lay awake in the endless hours of night. A presence that was separate from her but also intrinsically, essentially her. Like discovering a room in a house you'd lived in your whole life. Your wolf. Your true self. Why can't I feel you? Elara whispered one night, alone in her chambers. Why can't I shift? The seal. The blood magic. It was placed on you as an infant, to hide you from those who would take what we are. Pain threaded through the voice. I have slept so long, little one. So very long. The bond is waking me. Your mate's presence is cracking the seal. But it fights back. It hurts. Elara pressed her hand to her chest, where that constant flutter had become an ache. Sometimes it feels like something's trying to tear me apart from the inside. It is. Nyx's voice was gentle, sad. The seal wasn't meant to hold this long. It's weakening, but slowly. Too slowly. If it doesn't break before the eclipse, I'll die. We'll die. Both of us. Together, as we were always meant to be. Elara closed her eyes against the burn of tears. How do I break it? Complete the bond. Your mate can anchor you when the seal finally shatters. Without that anchor. A pause. The power will consume you. Complete the bond, Elara repeated. You mean? Yes. A hint of warmth, almost amusement. The king wants you. And whether you admit it or not, little one, you want him too. It happened in the dining hall. Elara had been returning to her chambers, taking the servant's route out of habit, when she turned a corner and collided with a girl carrying a tureen of soup. Everything happened at once. The tureen flew from the girl's hands. Soup arced through the air, steaming, scalding, aimed directly at Elara's face. She threw up her hands instinctively, bracing for agony. The soup froze. Not cooled. Froze. Hung suspended in midair, droplets crystallizing into ice even as steam still rose from them. The tureen stopped too, defying gravity, spinning slowly an inch from Elara's chest. Silence. Elara stared at her own hands. They were glowing. A soft silver light emanated from her skin, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. Her eyes, she couldn't see them, but she could feel them burning, feel something ancient and terrible looking out through them. Goddess preserve us. The servant girl stumbled backward, face white with terror. Her eyes, look at her eyes. The glow flickered. The soup crashed to the floor with a splatter. The tureen shattered. The spell, if that's what it was, broke as suddenly as it had formed. Elara ran. The gardens were a maze of hedges and stone, designed to confuse and impress visitors. Elara found the deepest corner and collapsed against a statue of some long-dead wolf king, her breath coming in gasps, her whole body shaking. What was she? What was she becoming? You're going to freeze out here. Kael's voice came from the darkness. She hadn't heard him approach, had barely registered his presence until he was there, stepping out of the shadows like he'd been carved from them. Stay away from me. The words came out broken, desperate. I don't know what I am. I don't know what's happening to me. I could hurt you. You could never hurt me. You don't know that. You didn't see, she choked on a sob. The soup just stopped. My hands were glowing. My eyes were silver. He knelt before her, this king who bowed to no one, and took her trembling hands in his. I saw. Ronan told me. Half the kitchen staff is convinced you're possessed. Maybe I am. You're not. He pressed her hands to his chest, over his heart. You're waking up, Elara. Whatever was done to you as a child, whatever seal holds your wolf captive, it's breaking. And what's underneath is magnificent. It's terrifying. Yes. He didn't lie to her. And probably dangerous. And likely to get worse before it gets better. He lifted one of her hands to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. I don't care. Whatever you are, whatever you become, you are mine, and I am yours. Nothing changes that. Nothing ever will. Elara stared at him, this brutal, violent man who had shown her more gentleness in a week than she'd received in her entire life. Why? You could have any woman in 5 territories. Why would you want someone so broken? You're not broken. His voice was fierce. You were hidden. Protected. And now you're emerging, and you're going to be the most powerful wolf this kingdom has ever seen. His hands cupped her face. But even if you weren't, even if you were truly wolfless, truly ordinary, I would still want you. The bond doesn't make mistakes. You are my mate. Everything else is details. When he kissed her, she didn't pull away. Thane's report came 2 days before the eclipse. Lady Seraphine, the spymaster said, spreading documents across Kael's desk. She's been in contact with a faction calling themselves the Harvesters. They're real, very real. A cult of sorts, dedicated to stealing the power of original bloodlines through a ritual that requires. He glanced at Elara. Killing the host during a lunar eclipse. Kael's growl shook the windows. Seraphine. That scheming bitch. I'll tear her throat out myself. There's more. Thane's voice was carefully neutral. Seraphine isn't the leader. She's just a recruiter. The real head of the Harvesters is someone inside the castle. Someone with access to the archives, to the servant records, to your inner circle. Who? I'm still working on that. Thane gathered his documents. But whoever it is, they've been planning this for years. Maybe decades. Elara wasn't a random acquisition, she was hunted. Specifically targeted. Everything from her father's gambling debts to her sale to Blackmoor was orchestrated to bring her here, to the one place where the ritual can be completed. Elara's stomach turned. My father was part of this? Almost certainly. Though likely just as a pawn. Thane's forgettable face showed something like sympathy. I'm sorry. I know that's not easy to hear. It wasn't. But some part of her had known. Had always known that Richard Vance's cruelty went deeper than simple disappointment in a wolfless daughter. Find the leader, Kael ordered. Whatever it takes. Whoever it is. Thane bowed. Of course, Your Majesty. Elara woke to darkness. At first she thought she was dreaming, her body felt heavy, sluggish, disconnected from her mind. But the shadow moving at the foot of her bed was real. The glint of moonlight on metal was real. The syringe was real. Nothing personal, child. Helene's voice was soft, almost kind. But your wolf is worth more than your life. Elara opened her mouth to scream. The needle pierced her neck before any sound could emerge. Cold flooded her veins. The world tilted, blurred, began to dissolve at the edges. She tried to call for Kael, tried to summon the power that had frozen the soup, tried to reach for Nyx in the depths of her consciousness. Run, the voice whispered, faint and fading. They're taking us. Run, run, run. But Elara couldn't run. Couldn't move. Couldn't do anything but fall into the darkness as hands lifted her from the bed and carried her away. The last thing she saw was Helene's satisfied smile. Then nothing. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 5. The bond screamed. Kael came awake like a drowning man breaking the surface, gasping, thrashing, his wolf erupting from the depths of his consciousness with a howl that shook dust from the rafters. Pain lanced through his chest, sharp and wrong, the kind of pain that didn't belong to his own body. Elara. He was out of bed before conscious thought caught up. Down the corridor in nothing but sleeping trousers, feet bare against cold stone, every nerve in his body on fire. Servants dove out of his way. Guards pressed themselves against walls. Someone called his name, he didn't hear it, didn't care, couldn't focus on anything but the wrongness pulsing through the bond. Her door was closed. He tore it off its hinges. The room was dark. Still. The fire had burned down to embers, casting everything in shades of red and black. The bed was empty, sheets tangled, and there on the white linen. Blood. Not much. Just drops. But enough. Enough to shatter something inside him. A syringe gleamed on the floor. Kael's vision went red. Later, he wouldn't remember the destruction. Wouldn't remember the way he'd torn the canopy from the bed, shattered the windows with his fists, reduced the wardrobe to kindling. He wouldn't remember the guards who tried to stop him, tried to calm him, tried to do their duty, or how he'd thrown them through walls without breaking stride. He would only remember the emptiness. The void where she should have been. The bond stretched to its breaking point, pulled taut across miles, anchored to something he couldn't reach. Kael. Kael. Ronan's voice penetrated the haze. His beta stood in the doorway of what had once been a beautiful chamber and was now a war zone, hands raised, expression carefully blank. She's gone. Kael's voice came out wrong. Layered. His wolf and his human tangled together, neither fully in control. They took her. They took her. We'll find her. You'll find her now. He advanced on Ronan, and for the first time in 150 years, his beta took a step back. Tear this castle apart. Question everyone. Kill anyone who hesitates. I don't care what it costs, I don't care who has to die, you will find her or I will tear this kingdom apart stone by stone until there's nothing left but rubble and bones. Kael. Now. The roar shook the foundations. Ronan ran. Consciousness returned in pieces. Cold stone beneath her cheek. The smell of damp earth and old blood. A throbbing in her neck where the needle had pierced. And pain, sharp, constant, radiating from her wrists. Elara forced her eyes open. She was in a chamber carved from rock, deep underground if the oppressive darkness was any indication. Torches flickered in sconces along the walls, casting dancing shadows. Ancient symbols were etched into the stone floor, a circle, lines connecting to form patterns she didn't recognize, channels that looked disturbingly like they were designed to collect liquid. Blood, Nyx whispered weakly. They're meant to collect blood. Elara tried to move and discovered she couldn't. Silver chains bound her wrists to iron rings set into the wall. The metal bit into her skin, and where it touched. She screamed. The silver burned. Like fire, like acid, like nothing she'd ever felt. Wolfless omegas didn't react to silver. It was just another metal to them, harmless, meaningless. But it was burning her. The seal is breaking, Nyx said, and there was fear in her voice now. Faster than before. The trauma, the separation from our mate, it's accelerating everything. We're running out of time. Well. She's awake. Helene emerged from the shadows, and gone was any pretense of the severe but professional head servant. Her face was alight with satisfaction, her eyes gleaming with something like triumph. You, Elara spat. You drugged me. You. Delivered you. Finally. After watching you for days, waiting for the right moment. Helene crouched before her, head tilted like she was examining an interesting specimen. Do you know how long I've been doing this? Decades. I've worked in that castle for 40 years, placing servants, gathering information, identifying potential vessels. Vessels? Original bloodlines don't announce themselves, you foolish girl. They hide. Disguise themselves. The wolfless ones are the most valuable, wolves sealed so completely that no one suspects what lies beneath. Helene's smile widened. The last 3 I brought to the harvesters were powerful, but imperfect. Their bloodlines were diluted, their wolves weak. But you. She reached out, and Elara flinched away from her touch. You're the one we've been waiting for. The lunar wolf. The rarest of the originals. Your power can make an alpha invincible. You're insane. Am I? Helene stood, brushing dust from her knees. Or am I simply pragmatic? The faction leader has waited a century for someone like you. Now that you're here, everything changes. Who? Elara demanded. Who's behind this? Helene's smile turned secretive. Oh, I think I'll let him introduce himself. She disappeared into the darkness, and for a long moment, Elara was alone with her fear. Then footsteps. Measured. Unhurried. The gait of someone who knew they had all the time in the world. A figure emerged from the tunnel, and Elara's blood turned to ice. Hello, little wolf. Thane's forgettable face was transformed by a smile that held no warmth at all. I apologize for the accommodations. They're temporary, I assure you. In 2 days, you won't need a room at all. You. The word came out strangled. You're the spy master. You're supposed to be finding the traitor? He laughed, soft and cold. Difficult to find what isn't lost. I've been exactly where I intended to be for the past 100 years, at Kael's right hand, guiding his decisions, shaping his kingdom, waiting for the final piece to fall into place. Why? Thane moved closer, circling her like a predator with trapped prey. Because I should be the one on that throne. Because I've spent a century watching that arrogant bastard rule, knowing I was smarter, more cunning, more deserving. But raw power matters in our world, doesn't it? The king is the strongest. The king holds his throne by force. He stopped before her, crouching to meet her eyes. Unless someone finds a way to become stronger. The ritual, Elara breathed. You want my wolf's power. I want what you are. The lunar wolf is a legend, the original who can control the boundary between life and death, who draws power directly from the moon itself. With your wolf's essence harvested into me, I'll be unstoppable. Even Kael won't be able to challenge me. He'll kill you. When he finds out. How will he find out? Thane's smile was patient, almost kind. You'll be dead. Your body will be ash. And I'll be his loyal spy master, grieving alongside him for his lost mate while I grow stronger with each passing moon. Elara pulled against her chains, ignoring the searing agony of the silver. He'll feel it. The bond, he'll know something's wrong. The bond is already screaming. I'm sure he's tearing the castle apart as we speak. Thane stood, straightening his coat. But he's looking in all the wrong places. By the time he thinks to look here, if he ever does, you'll be nothing but a memory. You won't get away with this. I already have. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, I almost forgot. There's someone who wanted to see you before the ritual. Another figure emerged from the darkness. Elara's heart stopped. Richard Vance looked older than she remembered. Grayer. More haggard. But his eyes were the same. Cold. Empty. The eyes of a man who had sold his daughter like livestock. Father, she whispered. Don't call me that. He didn't look at her. Couldn't seem to meet her eyes. I did what I had to do. You sold me. You sent me here to die. I sent you where you were always meant to go. Now he looked at her, and there was something almost like regret in his expression. Almost, but not quite. Your mother was a vessel, just like you. Thane identified her bloodline before you were even born. When we discovered she was carrying a lunar wolf. He shrugged. The plan was set. All I had to do was raise you until you were ready. The room spun. You knew. This whole time, you knew what I was. You knew they were going to. He's my brother. Richard nodded toward Thane, and the world collapsed around Elara. Half-brother, technically. Different mothers. But blood is blood. When he told me what you were worth, what harvesting your wolf could accomplish. You helped them seal me. The realization crashed through her like a wave. As an infant. You watched them trap Nyx inside me. It was necessary. An unsealed lunar wolf would have been detected immediately. But a wolfless omega? No one looks twice at a defect. Elara's vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. Her whole life, every cruel word, every disappointed look, every moment she'd felt worthless and broken, had been a lie. A performance. She'd been raised like livestock because that's all she'd ever been to him. Cattle waiting for slaughter. The debt, she managed. The gambling. Was any of it real? A convenient cover story. Thane arranged everything, the debts, the buyer, the transport to Blackmoor. You were always going to end up here, Elara. It was just a matter of timing. Richard finally stepped back, relief evident in his posture now that his confession was complete. For what it's worth. I am sorry. You were a good daughter. Obedient. Easy to manage. It wasn't personal. Get out. Her voice shook with rage. Get out before I find a way to kill you myself. Richard left without another word. Thane lingered a moment longer. The eclipse is in 2 days. I'd suggest making peace with your goddess, little wolf. You'll be meeting her soon. Then she was alone. Elara hung from the chains, silver burning her wrists, tears streaming down her face. Everything she'd believed about her life was a lie. Her father wasn't a disappointed parent, he was her executioner. Her wolflessness wasn't a defect, it was a prison designed to hide her until the slaughter. And Kael. Kael. The bond, Nyx screamed, her voice stronger now, desperate. Complete the bond. It's the only way to break the seal in time. If you can reach him, if you can anchor yourself to him before they begin the ritual. I don't know how. Elara sobbed. I've never felt it. I don't know what I'm looking for. You do. You've always felt it. You just didn't know what it was. The flutter in her chest. The warmth when he touched her. The way her skin burned when he was close, the way the voice in her head stirred every time his fingers brushed hers. Find it, Nyx urged. Reach for it. It's there, it's always been there. You just have to look. Elara closed her eyes. She breathed. And for the first time in her life, she reached inside herself. Past the pain. Past the fear. Past the silver burning her wrists and the knowledge of her father's betrayal and the certainty of death looming 2 days away. Deeper. Deeper. And she found it. A thread. Thin and golden, pulsing with warmth, stretched across the darkness of her consciousness like a lifeline. It led somewhere far away, somewhere she couldn't see but could feel, anchored to a presence that was rage and fear and desperate, howling love. Kael. Elara wrapped herself around that golden thread. And pulled. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 6. The harvester's face was unrecognizable. Kael had been working on him for 3 hours. The man had been captured trying to flee through the eastern gate, one of Helene's contacts, according to the information Ronan had beaten out of a kitchen maid. He'd held out longer than expected, but everyone broke eventually. Everyone. Please, the man gurgled through shattered teeth. I told you everything, the fortress, the mountains, the ritual site. You told me nothing useful. Kael's voice was ice. His hands were covered in blood that wasn't his own. Where is she? Exactly where? I don't know the exact location, only the leaders know. Please, I swear on the goddess. The tug came without warning. A pull in his chest, sharp and desperate. Not pain, not exactly, but something deeper. Something primal. A golden thread yanking at his consciousness, wrapped around his heart and pulling. Elara. Kael dropped the man mid-sentence. She's calling me. The words came out strange, layered, his wolf surging so close to the surface that his eyes were already blazing gold. She's reaching through the bond. Ronan stepped forward. Kael, wait, we need a plan, we need men. No time. The shift was already beginning, bones cracking, muscles tearing and reforming. Follow when you can. At least tell me where. But Kael was beyond words. The Lycan form was something he rarely used. It wasn't the simple wolf shift that most of their kind employed, for legs, fur, fangs. This was something older. Something monstrous. A creature that walked upright on legs bent like a wolf's, with claws that could tear through steel and a body twice the size of any normal man. It was the form of the original Lycans. The form that made other wolves run. He embraced it now, letting the beast consume him entirely. His clothes shredded. His spine curved. His jaw elongated into a muzzle filled with teeth designed for killing. When the transformation completed, he threw back his head and howled, a sound that shattered windows and sent every wolf in the castle to their knees. Then he ran. The bond was a compass. It pulled him north, into the mountains, through forests where the snow still clung despite the approaching spring. He didn't feel the cold. Didn't feel the branches that tore at his fur or the rocks that cut his paws. He felt only her fear, her pain, her desperate reach across the miles. I'm coming, he thought, pushing the feeling through their connection. Hold on. I'm coming. The fortress rose from the mountainside like a scar. Ancient. Abandoned. Or so the kingdom believed. But torches flickered in windows that should have been dark, and guards patrolled walls that should have been crumbling. They saw him coming. They tried to stop him. Tried. The first wave met him at the outer wall, 6 wolves in their shifted forms, trained killers every one. Kael tore through them like paper. His claws opened throats, shattered spines, painted the snow red and steaming. More came. He didn't slow. The second wave brought silver weapons, swords, spears, arrows that hissed through the air. One caught him in the shoulder. He ripped it out without breaking stride and used it to impale the archer who'd fired it. By the time he reached the inner gate, bodies littered the courtyard. He was covered in blood. He felt nothing but the bond, pulling him down, into the depths beneath the fortress. Hold on, he screamed silently. I'm almost there. Elara felt him coming. It started as warmth, a flush of heat through the golden thread she'd been clinging to with everything she had. Then sensation. Rage so pure it was almost holy. Fear that matched her own. And beneath it all, love so fierce it made her want to weep. He's close, Nyx whispered, and for the first time since their capture, hope threaded through her voice. So close. Hold on, little one. Hold on. But Thane felt it too. He'd been preparing the ritual chamber, drawing symbols in blood, arranging candles, chanting in a language that made Elara's ears bleed. Now he stopped, head tilting like a predator catching a scent. He's here. Something flickered across his forgettable face. Not fear, Thane didn't seem capable of fear, but calculation. Faster than I expected. The bond must be stronger than I realized. He'll kill you. Elara's voice was raw from screaming, but she managed to make it fierce. He'll tear you apart. Perhaps. Thane's smile was cold. But not before I get what I came for. He moved to a table lined with instruments that gleamed in the torchlight. Knives. Needles. Vials filled with substances Elara didn't want to identify. He selected something that looked like a syringe filled with liquid shadow. The eclipse is still 2 days away, he said conversationally, but the ritual can be accelerated. The extraction won't be as clean, you'll likely die faster, and the power transfer will be imperfect. But I'll still get enough to challenge Kael. No. This will hurt. He approached her, and his eyes were empty, clinical. Quite a lot, actually. Try not to bite off your tongue. The needle pierced her chest, directly over her heart. And Elara screamed. The sound tore through the fortress. Kael heard it 3 levels up, echoing through stone corridors, and something inside him shattered. He abandoned any pretense of strategy, of caution. He simply moved, through walls when doors were too slow, through anyone fool enough to get in his way. Her screams guided him like a beacon. Each one drove his wolf deeper into madness. Each one stripped away another layer of his humanity. By the time he reached the ritual chamber, he was more beast than man. The doors were iron, reinforced, designed to hold against armies. He tore them off their hinges with his bare claws. And stopped. Elara lay on a stone altar in the center of the room, silver chains binding her wrists and ankles. Blood ran from her nose, her ears, the corners of her eyes. Her back was arched in agony, her mouth open in a scream that no longer had sound. Thane stood over her, one hand pressed to her chest, black light pulsing between his fingers. Ah! The spymaster didn't turn around. Right on time. Kael shifted back to human form. He needed words for this, needed his human mind to process what he was seeing. But the shift was incomplete, his body caught between forms, claws still extended, eyes still gold. Step away from her. His voice was gravel and broken glass. Now. Or what? Thane finally turned, and his smile was triumphant. You'll kill me? Go ahead. Try. Kael moved. Wait. Thane held up a hand, and the black light around Elara's chest pulsed brighter. She convulsed, fresh blood streaming from her nose. The ritual is already begun. Kill me now, and it completes. Her wolf's power transfers to me the moment I die. That's how the magic works. My death is the final seal. Kael froze. That's right. Thane's smile widened. You can't stop this. You can only watch while I take everything she is. He's lying. Elara's voice was broken, barely audible, but her eyes found Kael's across the chamber. He's lying, the ritual isn't complete, if you kill him now. If he kills me now, you both die. Thane pressed harder, and Elara screamed again. The power surge will consume you, little wolf. Is that what you want? To die together in some romantic blaze of glory? Yes. Elara's voice was stronger now, fierce despite the agony. Yes. I'd rather die than let you have her. I'd rather burn than let you use my wolf against him. Her eyes blazed, and Kael saw silver threading through the brown. Do it, Kael. Kill him. I won't let him have her. Kael hesitated. 1 second of hesitation. It was enough. Seraphine emerged from the shadows behind him, silent as death. He caught her scent a heartbeat too late, perfume and hatred and something chemical, something wrong. The blade sank into his back. Pain exploded through him. Not the clean pain of a wound, but something poisonous, something that spread through his veins like fire and ice combined. He staggered, turned, saw Seraphine's triumphant smile. Moon's bane, she purred. The only poison that can kill a Lycan king. How does it feel, your majesty? To finally be mortal? Kael's legs buckled. He fell. Kael. Elara's scream was inhuman. It wasn't just her voice anymore, it was layered, doubled, two beings crying out as one. The chains rattled against the altar. The candles flickered. Hold her down, Thane commanded, and Seraphine moved toward the altar. The ritual is almost complete. Once I have the wolf's power, you will have nothing. The voice that came from Elara's mouth wasn't hers. It was older. Deeper. Resonant with power that made the stone floor tremble. The chains exploded. Not broke. Exploded, silver links flying in all directions, embedding themselves in walls, in ceiling, in Seraphine's shoulder. The noble woman screamed and stumbled backward. Elara rose from the altar. Her eyes were pure silver. No iris, no pupil, just endless moonlight blazing from sockets that seemed too bright to look at directly. Her hair floated around her face despite the absence of wind. And her skin was glowing, silver light pulsing beneath the surface like a second heartbeat. When she spoke, Two voices emerged in perfect harmony. You heard our mate. The temperature plummeted. Frost crept across the stone floor, climbed the walls, turned breath to visible clouds. Thane's blood-drawn symbols crackled and froze. The candle sputtered and died. Seraphine tried to run. Ice caught her feet, spread up her legs, immobilized her mid-stride. Thane backed toward the far wall, and for the first time, real fear flickered across his forgettable face. The seal, how, the ritual should have. You tried to tear me from my host. The dual voice was calm. Conversational. Utterly terrifying. You tried to harvest what was never yours. You poisoned our mate and thought we would simply let you. Elara, Nyx, whoever she was now, stepped off the altar. Her bare feet didn't touch the frozen ground. She floated, suspended by power that made the air itself hum. Now you die. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 7. Power poured through Elara like a river breaking through a dam. Not her power, not entirely. This was older. Vaster. A force that had been sleeping for 23 years, trapped behind walls of blood magic, waiting for this moment to finally, catastrophically wake. Nyx filled every cell of her being. Not possessing, merging. Two souls becoming one, two consciousnesses weaving together until Elara couldn't tell where she ended and the wolf began. And with that merger came understanding. The lunar wolf wasn't just a title. It was a description. A definition. She didn't simply draw power from the moon, she was the moon's will made flesh. The boundary between light and shadow. The veil between life and death. And right now, she was furious. Seraphine was still frozen to the floor, ice climbing past her knees, her beautiful face contorted with terror. Please, I was just following orders, Thane made me. Lies. The dual voice rang through the chamber like a bell. We can taste them on your tongue. You wanted him dead. A gesture, almost lazy, and the ice crept higher. You wanted to be Luna. You would have stepped over my corpse to wear the crown. Please. You drove a poisoned blade into our mate's back. The ice reached Seraphine's chest. Her lips turned blue. Frost crystallized on her eyelashes. You wanted him to die slowly. In agony. While you watched. I'm sorry, please, I'll do anything. Elara tilted her head, and something cold and ancient looked out through her silver eyes. Then age. The power shifted. Not ice this time, something worse. Something that touched the very essence of what Seraphine was. The noblewoman's scream cut off as her skin began to wrinkle, sag, collapse inward. Her auburn hair turned white, then fell out in clumps. Her hands became claws, then skeletal, then dust. In the space of 3 heartbeats, 50 years of life drained from her body. What hit the floor was barely recognizable as human, a withered husk that crumbled to ash before it finished falling. Thane ran. He made it 6 steps. The shadows caught him, actual shadows, rising from the floor like grasping hands, wrapping around his ankles, his wrists, dragging him backward across the frozen stone. He clawed at the ground, leaving bloody trails from broken fingernails. No, this isn't possible, the seal should have. The seal broke. Elara floated toward him, moonlight trailing from her skin like mist. When you tried to tear us apart, you shattered the last of the chains. You freed what you sought to steal. The shadows lifted Thane upright, suspending him like a puppet with cut strings. His forgettable face was unrecognizable now, twisted with terror, pale as death, aging by the second as the ambient power of the lunar wolf ate away at his life force. Please. The word came out cracked. I'll tell you everything, the other harvesters, the network, everything. We already know everything. Elara raised her hand, and Thane's body went rigid. We can see it. Every memory. Every sin. Every moment of pain you've caused. Her eyes blazed brighter. And now you'll feel them. The screaming lasted a long time. Elara made him experience death 3 times, once for each wolfless woman he'd helped murder over the past century. She pulled the memories from his mind and forced him to live them. The terror of Iris, trapped and alone, calling for help that never came. The agony of Coralie, her wolf torn from her soul piece by piece. The despair of Ren, who died knowing no one would ever know her name. 3 deaths. 3 eternities of suffering compressed into minutes. When it was done, Thane hung limp in the shadow's grip, blood streaming from his eyes and ears, his mind shattered by horrors he could no longer escape. Please. The word was barely audible. End it. Just end it. As you wish. The shadows tightened. And Thane came apart. The power crested. Elara felt it happen, felt the wave reach its peak and begin to crash down on her. Too much. Her human body wasn't designed for this, wasn't strong enough to contain the force of a fully awakened original wolf. We're burning, Nyx said, and there was sorrow in her voice. Our body can't hold us. We need an anchor. We need Kael. He lay where he'd fallen, the moon's bane spreading through his veins, his breathing shallow and labored. Even dying, he was beautiful, savage and powerful and hers. Her mate. Her anchor. Elara collapsed beside him, the silver light flickering around her like a candle in wind. The power was eating her alive. She could feel her organs failing, her cells burning, everything that made her human dissolving under the weight of what she'd become. The bond, Nyx urged. Complete it now. His life force can anchor us, and our power can save him. But you must choose him. Fully. Forever. Once the bond is complete, there's no going back. Your souls will be merged as completely as we are. I choose him. The words came out ragged, desperate. I choose him. I'll always choose him. Then claim him. Elara pressed her lips to Kael's. The kiss was gentle at first, a goodbye, a prayer, a promise. But then she felt Nyx rise within her, felt ancient instinct take over. Her teeth found the junction of his neck and shoulder, the place where mate marks had been given since the dawn of their kind. She bit down. His blood flooded her mouth, iron and fire and something that tasted like coming home. And even unconscious, even dying, Kael responded. His hand came up, tangling in her hair. His body arched toward hers. His own teeth found her neck, piercing the skin, marking her as she marked him. The bond exploded. Light filled the chamber. Silver and gold, intertwined, 2 colors that shouldn't have been able to merge but did anyway, spiraling around their joined bodies like a cocoon, like a chrysalis, like the beginning of something new. Elara felt herself dissolving. Reforming. Her soul reaching across the golden thread that connected her to Kael and fusing with his. Not losing herself, expanding. Becoming more than she'd been. Becoming half of something infinite. She felt his memories flood into her, 200 years of loneliness, of searching, of desperate hope that his mate was out there somewhere. She felt his first glimpse of her in that corridor, the way his world had shifted on its axis in that single moment. She felt his terror when he'd found her room empty, his rage as he'd torn through the harvesters, his despair as the moon's bane had begun to claim him. And he felt her. All of her. Every cruel word from her father, every moment of believing herself broken, every spark of wonder when she'd first heard Nyx's voice. He felt her fear and her courage and the fierce, desperate love that had driven her to reach for him across the miles. 2 souls. 2 halves. Finally, irrevocably, whole. The light faded. Elara opened her eyes, both of them, silver and brown merged into something new, something that shifted like moonlight on water, and found herself lying on cold stone, wrapped in warmth. Kael's arms. He was breathing. Deep, even breaths that she could feel against her cheek. The moon's bane that had been killing him was gone, purged by the power of their completed bond. The wound in his back was nothing but a silver scar. Kael. Her voice was hoarse, barely there. Kael, wake up. His eyes opened. Gold, still. But softer now. Warmer. Looking at her like she was the sun after an eternal winter. I felt you call me. His voice was rough, wonder threading through every word. Across the entire kingdom. I felt you reach for me through the bond. I finally felt it. Tears streamed down her face, but she was smiling, laughing, crying all at once. The bond. You. I felt you. And I refused to die before I could tell you. He kissed her before she could finish. It was different now. The bond sang between them, golden and silver light pulsing with every heartbeat they shared. She could feel his emotions as clearly as her own, relief and joy and fierce, possessive love. Tell me anyway, he murmured against her lips. I love you. The words came easily now, naturally, like they'd been waiting her whole life to be spoken. I love you. I choose you. Forever. Forever, he agreed, and kissed her again. They found Ronan and a small army of Blackmoor wolves searching the fortress. The carnage Kael had left in his wake was impressive, but the aftermath of Elara's awakening was worse. Frost still coated the ritual chamber. The pile of ash that had been Seraphine stirred in a draft from nowhere. The shadows seemed darker, deeper, more alive. And Thane, no one could look at what remained of Thane for long. What happened here? Ronan breathed, staring at Elara with something between awe and terror. Justice. She leaned into Kael's side, exhausted but stable. The bond anchored her now, kept Nyx's power contained in a way the broken seal never could. Take me home. Blackmoor Castle was in chaos. They arrived to find wolves running through corridors, messengers shouting over each other, and a war council already assembled in the Great Hall. The moment Kael walked through the doors, silence fell. Then cheering erupted. He's alive, someone shouted. The king lives. But the celebration was short-lived. An older general pushed through the crowd, his face grim. Your Majesty, thank the goddess you've returned. We have problems. Report. Thane was a traitor in more ways than we knew. He'd been feeding information to enemy kingdoms for years, troop movements, defensive positions, your personal weaknesses. When word spread that you'd been poisoned. The general swallowed. 3 Alpha Kings have mobilized. Thornwood, Silvercrest, and Iron Valley. Their armies are marching on our borders as we speak. Kael's expression didn't change. How long until they arrive? A week. Maybe less. Then we have a week to prepare. He looked down at Elara. And they'll find a very different Blackmoor waiting for them. The crowd parted as they walked toward the throne, and Elara realized with a start that they were parting for her. Looking at her with the same fear and respect they gave Kael. She could feel the power humming beneath her skin, controlled now, but visible. Present. The Luna had risen. And everyone knew it. They were nearly to the throne when a commotion erupted near the side entrance. Guards dragged a struggling figure into the hall, dirty, disheveled, his fine clothes torn and stained. Richard Vance. Found him trying to cross the eastern border, Your Majesty, a guard reported. He had gold in his saddlebags. Lots of it. Elara's heart turned to ice. Her father looked up, and when his eyes found hers, something crumpled in his expression. He'd seen the power coursing through her. He knew what she'd become. He knew his death had just walked into the room. Elara. He fell to his knees, hands clasped, tears streaming down his weathered face. Please, I had no choice, they threatened me, they said they'd kill me if I didn't cooperate. Stop. Her voice resonated with power, and Richard's mouth snapped shut mid-word. Stop lying. I can taste falsehood now, father. Every word you speak burns on my tongue. She stepped closer, and ice spread from her footprints on the stone floor. You watched them seal my wolf when I was a baby. You took money for my mother's death. You raised me to believe I was worthless, defective, a burden, all while knowing exactly what I was and what they planned to do to me. Her eyes blazed silver. You delivered me to die. I'm your father. You're my executioner. The words came out cold, final. Or you would have been, if your plan had worked. She turned to Kael, and something ancient moved behind her moonlit eyes. He's mine to judge. As Luna of Blackmoor, I claim the right of blood justice. The hall went silent. Every wolf present knew what those words meant. Blood justice was the oldest law, the right of a wronged party to execute judgment on the one who had harmed them. It couldn't be denied, couldn't be overruled. Even by a king. Kael looked at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, his mouth curved into a smile of pure dark pride. The Lunas will be done. If you are enjoying this video, do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Chapter 8. The Great Hall held its breath. Elara stood before her father, and the power that hummed beneath her skin cast silver shadows on the stone walls. Richard Vance knelt at her feet, sobbing, broken, a man who had orchestrated her destruction from birth and was only now understanding the depth of his miscalculation. She could kill him. It would be easy. A thought, a gesture, and he would age to dust like Seraphine. Or she could make it slow, let him feel every moment of pain he'd caused, the way she'd made Thane feel the deaths of the women he'd murdered. But death was too kind. Death was an ending. And her father deserved to live with what he'd done. Do you know what the harvesters wanted from me? Her voice echoed through the silent hall. They wanted to tear my wolf from my soul. Rip her out of me piece by piece and steal her power for themselves. Richard's sobs grew louder. Please, Elara, I'm your father. You're nothing to me. The words came out cold, final. But you gave me an idea. She reached for the power inside her, Nyx's power, the lunar wolf's dominion over the boundary between life and death. But instead of pushing outward, she pulled. Reached into the trembling man before her and found the spark of his wolf buried deep in his consciousness. It was a small wolf. Weak. Corrupted by decades of cowardice and cruelty. But it was innocent of Richard's sins, just an animal spirit bound to a man who had never deserved it. I'm sorry, Elara whispered to the wolf. You deserved better than him. Then she pulled. Richard screamed. It was a sound unlike anything the hall had ever heard, the scream of a soul being torn in two. His body convulsed, arched, collapsed as silver light poured from his chest. The light coalesced, took shape, a small gray wolf, ghostly and translucent, hovering in the air between them. For a moment, it looked at Elara with eyes full of gratitude. Then it dissolved, rising toward the ceiling like mist, finally free. Richard lay crumpled on the stone floor. His eyes were open but vacant. His skin had gone gray, aged 10 years in seconds. When he tried to speak, only a whisper emerged. What did you? I took your wolf. Elara looked down at him without pity. You're wolfless now. An omega in truth, not just in your twisted perception of me. She turned to the assembled wolves, to the guards and nobles and servants who had gathered to witness blood justice. This man is cast out from Blackmoor. He is forbidden from every pack in every territory. Let word spread that Richard Vance betrayed his own blood, sold his daughter to murderers, conspired with traitors, and watched his mate die for profit. Her voice rang like a bell. He will live the rest of his days as what he always despised. Wolfless. Omega. Alone. She nodded to the guards. Remove him. And make sure everyone knows why. They dragged Richard's broken form from the hall. His cries echoed off the stone long after he disappeared from sight. Kael's hand found hers, warm and solid and proud. That, he murmured, was magnificent. The enemy kings arrived 3 days later. They came with armies at their backs and demands on their lips, territory, tribute, submission. Word of Kael's poisoning had spread faster than Thane's other betrayals, and the vultures had come to feast on what they assumed was a weakened kingdom. They found something very different. The throne room had been transformed. Kael sat on his black stone throne as he always had, radiating power and menace. But beside him, on a throne that hadn't existed a week ago, sat Elara. She wore silver. Her hair was unbound, flowing past her shoulders like moonlight made solid. And her eyes, those shifting, luminous eyes, watched the approaching kings with an ancient patience that made their wolves whimper. King Aldrich of Thornwood was the first to enter. He was the wolf whose arm Kael had shattered in the council meeting, and his face still bore the marks of that encounter. He'd clearly expected to find a kingdom in chaos. He stopped dead when he saw Elara. What? His voice faltered. What is she? My mate. Kael's voice was casual, almost bored. My Luna. The lunar wolf awakened. The color drained from Aldrich's face. Behind him, his advisors began whispering frantically. King Brennan of Silvercrest entered next, took one look at the throne room, and immediately dropped to one knee. Your Majesties. I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Silvercrest has no quarrel with Blackmoor. We came only to offer our support in these difficult times. Your armies are positioned for invasion, Kael observed mildly. A defensive measure. Nothing more. They'll be withdrawn immediately. Brennan's eyes kept darting to Elara, unable to look away from the power that shimmered around her like heat off summer stone. Please accept Silvercrest's tribute as a token of our continued alliance. Aldrich was already backing toward the door. Thornwood as well. A misunderstanding, as my colleague said. We meant no offense. 2 down. 1 to go. King Caden of Iron Valley strode in like he owned the castle. He was the largest of the three, a mountain of muscle and arrogance, with a reputation for cruelty that rivaled the old stories about Kael himself. He'd been the one pushing for this invasion, according to Ronan's intelligence. He'd been the one who saw Kael's poisoning as an opportunity. He looked at Elara and laughed. This is your great weapon? A slip of a girl playing dress-up? He turned to Kael, dismissive. I don't know what trick you've pulled, Blackmoor, but I'm not fool enough to fall for it. Iron Valley doesn't kneel to pretenders. The temperature in the room dropped. Pretender. Elara spoke for the first time, and her voice layered with nixes, filling the hall with resonance that made the stones vibrate. You think I'm a pretender? I think you're a clever illusion. Some witch's trick to frighten children. Caden drew himself up to his full height. I challenge your claim. Let your so-called Luna prove herself in combat, if she's real. Wolf to wolf. Or admit this is all smoke and mirrors. Kael started to rise, murder in his eyes. Elara's hand on his arm stopped him. I accept. They faced each other in the courtyard. Caden had shifted, a massive black wolf, scarred from 100 battles, confident in his superiority. He was twice Elara's size even in human form. In wolf form, he was a monster. Elara didn't shift. She stood in her silver gown, barefoot on the cold stone, and smiled. Whenever you're ready. Caden lunged. He never reached her. The shadows rose to meet him, not just darkness, but solid things, tendrils of night that wrapped around his legs, his torso, his throat. He crashed to the ground mid-leap, howling with rage and sudden terror. Elara walked toward him slowly, power cascading off her in waves that made the watching wolves drop to their knees. You wanted to see what I am. She crouched beside the struggling wolf, and her eyes blazed pure silver. Look. She showed him. Not pain, she was done with gratuitous cruelty. Instead, she showed him truth. She opened his mind and poured her power into it, let him feel the full weight of what the lunar wolf was. The dominion over life and death. The boundary between worlds. The ancient, terrible magnificence of an original fully awakened. When she released him, Caden shifted back to human form and lay gasping on the stones, tears streaming down his face. I yield. The words came out broken, awed. I yield. Iron Valley yields. Everything we have, territory, tribute, soldiers, it's yours. Just, please. Elara stood. Looked at the assembled armies, thousands of wolves who had come to conquer and now knelt in the dirt, trembling. Go home, she said simply. And tell everyone what you saw here. Blackmoor is not to be challenged. Not now. Not ever. They fled. The graves were in a quiet corner of the castle cemetery. 3 small markers, weathered by decades of neglect. No names, the women had been servants, after all, and servants didn't warrant proper memorials. Just numbers. Dates. Evidence that someone had lived and died within these walls. Elara knelt before them and pressed her palms to the cold earth. Iris, she whispered, and power flowed from her fingers. Coralie. Ren. I know your names now. And I know what was done to you. She could feel them, 3 souls, trapped between worlds, their deaths so violent and incomplete that they'd never fully passed on. They'd been waiting here, in this quiet corner, for someone to notice. Someone to care. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. Tears streamed down her face. I'm sorry no one protected you. But I can give you peace now. I can set you free. The power of the lunar wolf, dominion over the boundary between life and death, flowed through her hands and into the earth. She felt the souls stir. Felt their confusion turn to hope, their hope turn to joy. 3 wisps of light rose from the graves. They hovered before her for a moment, gratitude without words, blessing without sound, and then rose toward the sky, dissolving into the moonlight. Finally, after all these years, they were free. Elara stayed there until dawn, honoring the women she'd never known but would never forget. The reforms began the next day. Elara stood before the gathered court, nobles, servants, guards, everyone who called Blackmoor home, and spoke with a voice that brooked no argument. For too long, this kingdom has measured worth by power alone. Omegas were dismissed. The Wolfless were discarded. Anyone who didn't fit the narrow definition of strength was deemed lesser, defective, worthless. Her eyes swept the crowd, finding faces she recognized. The servant girl who'd spilled soup on her. The kitchen staff who'd whispered. The nobles who'd sneered. No more. She raised her hand, and silver light pulsed from her skin. From this day forward, Blackmoor will protect all its people. Omegas will have the same rights as alphas. The Wolfless will be treated as full members of their packs. Anyone who harms, discriminates against, or demeans those they see as lesser will answer to me personally. The crowd shifted nervously. No one is defective. Elara's voice softened but lost none of its power. The moon goddess makes no mistakes. She made me wolfless for 23 years, and that wolflessness taught me compassion, resilience, and strength that I never would have learned otherwise. My weakness became my greatest weapon. And I will ensure that everyone in this kingdom has the chance to discover their own strength, whatever form it takes. The silence stretched. Then, slowly, the servants began to applaud. The guards joined in. Even some of the nobles, their faces thoughtful rather than fearful. Change was coming to Blackmoor. And Elara would make sure it lasted. Night fell soft and silver over the castle. Elara stood at her window, watching the moon rise, when the knock came. She didn't need to ask who it was, she could feel him through the bond, warm and golden and hers. Come in. Kael entered differently than he ever had before. No demands. No possessive fury. He moved slowly, almost hesitantly, and when he reached her, he took her hands in his with a gentleness that made her heart ache. I've been trying to find the right words, he said quietly. For days now. But everything I think of seems inadequate. Words for what? For what you are to me. What you've become. What you've done. He lifted her hands to his lips, pressed a kiss to each palm. I waited 200 years for you. I would have waited 2,000. You almost died for me. And I would again. His eyes met hers, gold and ancient and utterly sincere. Every day. Forever. Without hesitation. Elara reached up to touch his face, this fierce, brutal, beautiful man who had turned out to be everything she never knew she needed. "I love you," she whispered. "I don't think I said it enough before. But I love you. All of you. The beast and the king and everything in between. I love you." The words came out rough, like they'd been dragged from somewhere deep inside him. More than territory. More than power. More than breath. When he kissed her, the bonds sang between them, gold and silver intertwined, two souls that had finally found their missing halves. And when he carried her to the bed, when they completed their bond in every way possible, the castle itself seemed to sigh with contentment. The king had found his queen. And they would rule together for eternity. 1 year later. The moon rose full and silver over Blackmoor. Elara stood on the balcony of the royal chambers, one hand resting on the swell of her belly. "Twins," the healer said. "A boy and a girl. The first royal heirs in 2 centuries, and already strong enough that she could feel their wolves stirring inside her." Arms wrapped around her from behind, pulling her back against a warm, solid chest. "You should be resting." Kael's voice rumbled against her ear. "I'm pregnant, not dying. You're carrying the future of our kingdom. You should be resting." She laughed softly, leaning into his embrace. "You're going to be an insufferable father, aren't you?" "Absolutely. I plan to terrify every suitor who comes within a mile of our daughter. She's not even born yet. I'm planning ahead." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the moon climb higher. Below, the wolves of Blackmoor were gathering for the monthly howl, a tradition that had taken on new meaning since Elara's awakening. "Do you remember the first question you asked me?" Kael murmured. Elara smiled. "If I had a mate?" "You said no for now. Like it was a temporary condition. Like you were just waiting for the right person to come along." His arms tightened around her. "I nearly destroyed the throne room. You did destroy a wall. I couldn't stand the thought of anyone else." She turned in his arms, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "There was never going to be anyone else. The bond knew before I did. You were always mine, Kael. From the moment I walked into this castle. Maybe from the moment I was born." He kissed her, soft and deep and full of promise. Below, the first howl rose into the night. Then another. Then dozens, hundreds, the voices of Blackmoor greeting the moon that had blessed them with their Luna. Elara pulled back from the kiss, tilting her head toward the sky. And she held back. Her voice and Nyx's, merged and magnificent, rising to join the chorus below. A sound of power and peace and fierce, unbreakable joy. The Luna had risen. And she would never be silenced again. That I know you enjoyed this video. Kindly do well to hit the like button and subscribe to this channel. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below and share this video to family and friends. The end.